And we just have to. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is something I enjoy. If you have maybe part of your mind that enjoys the creative side of things and designing something, designing a piece, especially with technology, if technology is not something you've always been comfortable with, I think that it's fun to explore and get some practice in with building your own newsletter in kvCore. We've talked so much the last several weeks about all these different components of kvCore that really give it that powerful punch, the muscle of not just being an automated CRM, but giving you the ability to do things like landing pages, squeeze pages, boosting your listings and your open houses, being able to expand on lead generation with programs that may come with a cost. So we've talked about free things, we've talked about things with a cost. Today, we're going to talk about this sort of one last cool component that I enjoy doing, which is a newsletter. And it's, again, a free component. So what you're really talking about here, if you're interested in building a newsletter, we're talking about the muscle, okay? The energy, the time that it will take you to sort of train and practice and get to know how this format works so that maybe this is something that you can leverage to reach out to your, whether it be your sphere, to your clients, to your entire database on a regular basis. There are plenty of platforms out there that you can subscribe to, pre-built newsletters. And oftentimes people gravitate towards those and think that they have to be real estate focused. You can absolutely create your own real estate focused newsletter, but I'm also here to tell you, think outside the box. Sometimes the way that you get the greatest engagement is by appealing to people on a different level or on a different topic, all while subtly reminding them that you're there as their local real estate agent. Okay. So the example that I want to show you, we're going to actually build a newsletter together today. But what I want to show you is one of the ways that I leverage the newsletter is through team communication. And I've admittedly, in talking to my team, we got away from it a little bit, but are really going to ramp up what we're doing with the newsletter in 2023. What I love about it is that the newsletter can be a place to connect and deliver information, communicate information, but then you'll be able to build in pictures and illustrations and color and links, which I think is really cool. So here's an example of a previous team newsletter that I did. So the way I typically like to format that newsletter is, I start at the top with our logo. I'll put a picture that's relevant to whatever time of year, so this happened to be from May. So we were looking at Memorial Day. I'll give an intro and maybe some important things to highlight about what's going on with the team. And you'll notice here, I already have come to my first action button. So not is it just a newsletter where I'm reading, but it's a newsletter where I have call to action buttons that people can click on and move through to either, in this case, RSVP, or in another case, maybe to get more information, to learn more about a change in procedure, a change in what's happening in either New Jersey or Pennsylvania real estate. Could be a number of things. Okay. We had a Phillies event. So some people said that they didn't receive the invite. So again, another call to action button. Okay. So you'll see that I'm really not just trying to deliver the message, but I'm trying to call to action. Okay. To get the level of engagement, because that's what makes the newsletter sort of next level, right? Is when you see that people are finding value in the content and they want to go that next step. Okay. Now here's another example. We put out our team schedule, our calendar schedule for the year. So periodically in the newsletter, I'll just remind people of the dates and make sure that I have a link to the Zoom meeting that runs, consistently every month. So it's here and handy for them. Okay. When I have new programs to roll out. So these are just some of the examples. I always put a section about what's happening in the New Jersey broker's office. So if there are upcoming events or trainings that I think are of value, if there's, like I said, change in procedure, I like to include those things. Okay. So I try to really build in information, purpose, and vision of the team newsletter is to try to give my team members that one central place that if they feel like they've got 20 emails from EXP and they haven't had a chance to go through the workplace feed because they're so busy keeping up on their own social media feed, that they have that one place, sort of high level. I'm trying to give them the biggest, boldest bullet points to help them stay on top of what's happening and what they might want to give their, priority focus to. Okay. So that's an example of something that I built entirely in kvCore and that I was able to then mass email out to team members on a regular basis, all from within the platform. Okay. So that's what we're going to do today. What I would recommend, as I've maybe recommended in a couple of other situations, is that when you are building a newsletter, the best way to go about it is to first think about what you want your topic to be, what you want your audience to be, then build your outline of what you want, what content you want to include in that newsletter, and actually write it out all outside of kvCore. Don't go to kvCore until you're actually ready to build your newsletter content. Okay, it's going to make life much easier. It becomes sort of a copy and paste event as opposed to a creation event. And the template can be slightly finicky. So if you don't save it and you've worked, this has happened to me, I speak from experience. If you've worked through your newsletter and you're making progress and then you accidentally hit the wrong button, you could end up losing all of your changes, all of your creative content. So if you're not copying that from somewhere else, then you're essentially restarting from scratch, which you don't want to do. So what I want to show you is before we head into the actual template in kvCore, what I've gone ahead and done is build out an outline. And I'm only going to show you a few sections because I want you to get a feel for how this process works. You can make your newsletter as in-depth or all-encompassing, as you wish. Remember, I showed you a team newsletter, so that's one idea. Certainly, you can build something that's very home sales specific or real estate specific. And that could be just around home buyers and home sellers. That could be around, like house cleaning tips of the month or, checklists for selling your home and what's going on in the market. You can certainly do all of that. But I just want to show you, again, some outside the box, maybe creative ways that you can be touching those in your CRM that isn't a between the eyes real estate newsletter. Okay, so if you remember my website, and let me just hop over there real quick. If you remember my website, I talk about how you can create discover pages. And my theme, because I really zone in on Burlington County, I talk about Discover Burlington County here on my webpage, and then have links to a number of the towns within the county. So what I want to show you today is how I might build a website, or a newsletter, a newsletter that reiterates and reinforces that idea of Discover Burlington County. So here's my outline. Here's what I'm going to end up taking as content and incorporating it into this newsletter. So my title is Discover Burlington County. It's going to be the holiday edition. Let's say it's December 2022. Now, some of this, when I created it and put it together, is now a little bit outdated. But, for our training purposes, that's not relevant. But certainly for you, if you're planning something ahead, you wouldn't want to build out a newsletter this week or next week that talks about events that happened 3 weeks ago. If you're talking about something like this, where you want to encourage people to engage in their local county and their local holiday events, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to create the content, distribute the content so that people can read it and react to it and actually enjoy what's happening in their local community, right? So I have an intro set up and you can see, sort of what the verbiage is there. I'm going to be incorporating that as sort of my introduction, my lead in on my newsletter. And then I have several sections here, and I've come up with 5, but you can, again, it can be 2 or 3. it could be 7 or 8. But I think if you go beyond the 3, 4, 5 number, just make sure that you aren't too wordy with each of those sections. You almost want to sort of be fewer words, so that people don't sort of say after the 5th or 6th event that maybe they don't continue to scroll through. So bottom line is the more sections you build in, maybe the less content each of those sections should hold. Okay. So what I did is and not a lot of, once I've gotten this down kind of to a science, what did I do to get this content? I used Google, and I just explored Google to find out what's happening in Burlington County. I know enough about the county that I understand that certain things are happening. And then there are other things that I wasn't sure of. So I did a little exploring, clicked on different links, learned more, and then took that content to try and build out something that's going to be meaningful to the reader and put that content all in one place. So the way I'm going to organize it is I'm going to approach and identify events that might serve different purposes. So my first one is a great outdoor event for families. Then I have a great adult night out, right, which I think would be appealing, a unique Santa experience, another experience to enjoy Santa and more. And then finally, my last section is going to be a tour of holiday homes. The reason that I finish with the tour is because at the conclusion of the newsletter, I'm going to put a little verbiage and my headshot photo to wish people a happy holiday and hope that they enjoy some of these events, and remind them at the conclusion of my newsletter that I'm here to help them with all of their home buying and home selling needs. So notice that they're getting all the content first, and then I'm just sort of softly at the end. That's how I like to do it. But you feel free if you want to be the top of the newsletter with your headshot, with your bio, with your intro, making sure that people understand that you're a real estate agent and that maybe your content is sort of in that frame, then you do that. This is all about you and your creativity. Okay. So now that I have the content, and the other thing I just want to mention, one of the things that I did is I outlined the content, is that I made sure to think about what my action would be. Okay. So in this case, the Dickens Festival. I couldn't find a good website for the Dickens Festival, but I did find them on Facebook. So I pulled the Facebook link. Okay. The winery for an adult night out. I've used Valanzano with some other newsletter training, and I know they have a great website. So I just pulled their website link. So notice how I'm very prepared and ready to go when I get into my newsletter. The other thing that I did to prepare is that I've mentioned that I use Shutterstock. If you utilize, a free photo site, or if you have a subscription to a stock photo site, then think about your photos and what illustrations you might want to incorporate into your newsletter. So what I did is I went ahead and pulled a photo that can work for each of those sections. Whoops. So let me show you what we have. So here's like a picture of cranberries. So this is something that I'm going to use in my header when I talk about the holiday edition. When I talk about the Santa experience, that's a local experience that has to do with sort of almost like a scavenger hunt for Santa. So I thought that this picture would be appropriate. The winery, for example. Okay, so I went through, that was the last sort of preparation piece to get ready to build the newsletter, is to go and pull my illustrations. So now I feel ready to go. Now it's just going to be about building this actual newsletter. So the way that you're going to do that, let's head over to kvCore. Okay. So if you're at your dashboard, let's start there together. If you're at your dashboard, you're going to go into marketing, and then you're going to go into smart campaigns. Now, remember when we've talked about campaigns being sort of chains of events. So whether it's a combination of email, text message, phone call, tasks, right? Campaigns will be chains of events tied together. So for those, you're going to typically work from your kvCore library to pull in the campaigns into your own personal library. In this case, when we're talking about building a newsletter is going to be a one single event. So to find that template, you're going to go into the actual templates button. Now there's going to be a lot here. So templates is a place where you'll be able to find any individual event that could then be chained together to build a campaign. But again, for newsletter, we're talking about a one single event. So what I would recommend that you do is when you get here, you want to go into the search button and just type the word newsletter. It'll take a second. It's searching through the entire database. Okay. Now I have been building newsletters for a while. So there's going to be a number of things that are going to come up in the search results. But when you search, you may likely only have one result that's going to look like this, newsletter. And that is the standard newsletter template that kvCore provides. What you want to do is clone it so that you can take it, make a copy of it, and then edit it for your own purpose. Okay. So the way that you're going to do that is over to the right-hand side, you hit the clone button. When you hit clone, this box is going to come up where you're going to have the ability. Now, remember, in my case, I'm on a team platform. You should just see your own individual name at the top here in template scope. And now it's going to ask you to name your template. From my own personal experience, this is what I strongly recommend that you do. Whenever I take a standard template like this, and I'm going to customize it and make it my own, one of the first things I like to do is put my name in the title of the template, because this is my first alert, if you will, or my first signal that this is my content, not kvCore's content. The other thing is I'm going to give it some more descriptive information. So I'm going to put training newsletter, or I might put Discover Burlington County newsletter. Okay, so we can even, let's go that route. Let's say Discover, more Burlco, Discover Burlington County. And then the last important piece of information I would put when I name this template is a date. So I'm going to put December 2022. This is going to be really important because you can clone each time that you make a new newsletter. You can clone previous newsletter and just leverage that template. And then if you need to go back and review content. So if I want to review content in 2023, and I want to go back and see what I did in 2022, having this date in the name of my template is going to make it really easy for me to find my actual December 2022 template, as opposed to having to click on each one.
I have a question.
Sure.
How often would you recommend sending out a newsletter? Monthly, quarterly?
I'm going to be honest with you, Lynette. What I think is most important is that you have to decide how committed you are to doing it. If you can only devote the time once a quarter, then do it consistently once a quarter. If this is something that you maybe play around with a little bit and say, I enjoy this, or I'm getting some good traction on it, this is something I should be doing every month, then, set out to do it every month and then be consistent in it. I think that's the most important thing. And
I find that people who I speak to kind of have overload, okay, with emails and, overload with everything right now.
I do not disagree with you. But that's why I think, for me personally, I enjoy using the newsletter to talk about things that aren't directly real estate related. Because if I think about where I am, let's say that this newsletter was going to go out right after Thanksgiving. Okay, my head just exploded getting through Thanksgiving dinner preparation. And now my brain has started to think about how much I have to do to get ready for the Christmas and New Year's holidays, right? So plus work, plus life. So I wouldn't necessarily be so focused if I got a newsletter in my inbox about real estate, because real estate might not really pertain to something that's going on in my life right now. But if I give something like this that are like local events, or there are a number of things that you can do. The topics are sort of endless. The themes are endless. It's just about who you are, what you're creative about. There are certainly, like, people on my team, for example, that have an interest in highlighting local businesses, or have businesses of their own outside of real estate. You can somehow leverage all of that here. Maybe it's just about trying to educate people on the local businesses that are in your area. Maybe you take a different town every month or every quarter and find 2 or 3 small businesses to feature. So again, it's something that people, I think, will find more relevance in that content, no matter what stage of life they're in any given month or time of year. So I think from that standpoint, you're going to get greater engagement. And remember, the purpose of something like a newsletter is to make sure that you're staying top of mind. So the goal is for someone to click on the newsletter and open it. And you'll know from kvCore who is doing exactly that. You'll be able to go in and see when you review a lead's profile or a client or contact's profile, you'll be able to see if they're opening that newsletter email. So again, that's the goal. So I think if you think of it in that way, make decisions about what you can commit to, and then proceed from there, you'll find that it can be very valuable, again, without costing you any dollars, put it together. Millie, you had a question too?
Yes, 2 questions. Are people able to subscribe to a newsletter, like to our newsletter, and then are newsletters found on our website at all, or is it just solely, to those whom we email?
So those are 2 really good questions. So there's not currently an ability to subscribe. It doesn't get that extensive in kvCore. And in terms of attaching to the website, there's no sort of automated process that will take your newsletter and put it on your website. But what you could do is you could email it to yourself, and you can create a PDF version of that newsletter and blog it on your kvCore site. Or you can simply copy and paste the actual content and try to put that into your blog. The thing, if you don't put it in as a PDF, my concern if you just tried to copy it, say directly from Word or from a word processing program, is that it may not translate well onto the blog with all of your links. But certainly you can post the content there too. And what you can do from that standpoint on your blog is you can say, if you'd like to be added to my email distribution, please reach out to me. I would love to include you on my future newsletters. So that's a great thing to do, and you can leverage your blog for that. So here I am. I've gone ahead and changed my template name. I've reminded myself of the subject of the newsletter. Okay, so Discover Burlington County, let's say my monthly newsletter. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the clone template button. Okay, I'm not going to do any content creation here. I just want to get my copy, my clone set up first. Once I do that, I'm going to come back to that initial screen where I searched newsletter. Now I can search newsletter again, or what I might just search is Deanna, because now anything that I've created myself is going to come up. Okay, so here we go. This is my newly cloned newsletter template. So now I don't just see the clone opportunity, I see the edit button. Why would I use the clone button? Let's say December has now come and gone, and now I've gone into January. I can come back here to the December newsletter. I can click on clone, and it'll take that, everything that I've built for December, and it'll take it and create a copy so that I can start building out January. Once you do this once, being able to leverage one that you've actually built out and just swap out your content becomes that much easier than building one from scratch like we're going to do right now. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to hit the edit button. And this is where, again, having your data ready, having your outline ready is going to be very significant for you. Okay, we're going to work through sections, and you'll notice as I'm just trying to move this up a little bit. That wasn't what I wanted. As I move up through the content, so say it's that finicky. As I move up through the content, it's going to give me sort of a placeholder of information that I'm obviously going to swap out and make my own. I don't want to keep information there from what kvCore has entered. Okay. So let's take a look. We start up at the top. There's a header. There's opportunity for me to drop in and browse files. Now look what happens with the content. See how it's got a title header for the section, but then all of the content is in Latin. That's on purpose because it's just holding a place for you, but they don't want you to send it out that way. Okay, we're going to swap it out with some of our content. So how do we do that? So let's start back up at our header. Okay. I'm going to go ahead first. I'm going to get rid of this agent header because, as I told you, I want to put my information at the bottom, at the end of my newsletter. So here at the beginning, I'm just going to simply take my cursor. I'm going to make sure that I have that blue outline around the agent header section, and I can go ahead and hit the trash button. It's going to ask me if I'm sure, and I'm going to say yes. And now you'll see that that section is removed. Okay. Now, let's say I'm here at this is going to be my header, my sort of, I want to have my illustration, the title of my newsletter, holiday edition will all go here. So what I have to do is I have to tell the system what type of format is going to be in this section. So you have 3 tabs over here on the right-hand side. You have a content section, then you have rows, and then you have settings. Okay, so let's take a look at content. I have the ability to tell kvCore that this section is going to be an image, it's going to be a button, or maybe I need a divider line. Or I can even get more specific as I can go over to rows. And let's say I want to do, so here you see a full bar going straight across. Here you have 2 smaller rectangles that make up the full bar across. Let me see, I want to find one that I have like this one, where I have a longer bar to the left and then the shorter rectangle to the right. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what this is going to do. I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it and drop it right into the top of my newsletter. Okay. Now what I can do with that is once I have that format, I'm going to go over to content and I'm going to tell kvCore that this box on the left is going to be a text box. So I'm going to take the text and I'm going to drop it in here. So now that larger box on the left is going to be for text, and this smaller box on the right is going to be for an image. Okay, so I've taken and inserted a new section. It's going to be my lead off section, and I'm going to put my title and my photo. Okay, now let me do one other thing. I'm going to click Date Template because I want to save my changes. I'm going to make my life a little bit simpler by trying to upload all my photos now so that they'll be ready to go for me. So if I go back into my template and I go into the browse button for image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the upload button.
Sorry, can you go to that again? Did you just hit image? Was that
Sure.
it? I'm sorry.
Yep. No, you're good. Let me hit cancel here. So if I'm in my newsletter and where I just inserted the image, so I took this image button. So I'm telling kvCore that this is going to be an image. Now I have to find the image that I want to actually drop in there. So I'm going to hit the browse button. What it will do is it's going to take you, you'll essentially, as you continue to build your newsletters, you're going to have an upload section of your own that's going to continue to grow, okay, where you can upload upload photos yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the folder with my name on it. Again, I have a team platform, so I have multiple folders that are happening here. And what I'm going to do is once I click on that folder, notice there's a bunch of things in here, right? These are different images that over the course of time I've uploaded to use in my different newsletters. I have multiple pages. So once you're here at the top, you're going to have the ability to click upload. So I'm going to pull all the photos that we were just talking about. I'm going to pull all of those in right now. So I only have to go through this upload process one time. Okay, so I've clicked on all of my photos. I know where I have them ready to go on my computer. and I'm going to go ahead and upload them. Okay, so it's working through the upload process. And you'll notice, like, here I am with progress. And so I should be just about there. Once you see those circles, you should be close to the end. Okay, so here are my photos that I'm going to use in my newsletter. Okay, so for my intro, I like this cranberry and snow photo. So I'm going to go ahead and click on insert. And now look what it does. It takes me back to my newsletter template and it puts my illustration, my photo of choice there in that section. So now the other thing that I need to do is I need to go ahead and insert my title. So if you remember from my outline, I wanted to do Discover Burlington County Holiday Edition and make sure that somewhere I put in the date. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go back into kvCore, back into my template, and I'm going to click into this text box, and I can literally just start typing. Okay, so I'm going to do Discover Burlington County. Whoops, if I can spell it. And now once I start typing, I have all of these text options that I can format this content and this verbiage. So of course I want it to be larger, right? So I can go ahead and play around with size to find something, and maybe, okay, so that's too large. So you're going to sort of work around. And what you can do too is you can decide that you want your picture to be bigger. Maybe you want your verbiage to be smaller. You can resize all of that too. Okay, so, and you can also change the font style. So maybe I want something that's a little bit more, let's see, maybe something that's a little bit more, I don't know, how would I describe it? Finding a font that sort of has the same personality as the content of my newsletter. Okay, so I have Discover Burlington County. And then what I might want to do too is I'm going to put Holiday Edition, but maybe here I want that to be slightly smaller. So what I can do is I can just highlight Holiday Edition and just change the size of that particular line. So maybe I just want it to be a little bit smaller. And maybe I also want to change the color. Maybe I don't want to go with black and white. Maybe I want to go ahead and choose a deep red. Okay. And see. So it's kind of hard to see here because I picked a pretty dark color, but let me see if I can pick something a little bit brighter. I was trying to pull something that might reflect the cranberry color, but let's go a little bit lighter so you can see that on the screen. Okay, so I've gone ahead, and then I can do one more thing. I can go ahead and add my date, but maybe this time I don't really want the date to be very large at all. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe make this 16. Okay. So now I have the header for my newsletter. Okay. Now that I have the header, I can go ahead and remove sections or add sections at any time. And it's very easy to do. Yeah.
At any point, will you be going into that content subsection where it talks about social, dynamic content, video? I just had a few questions, unless you're going to go through each one later on.
Sure. You want to, maybe if you want to throw those questions out now, I can let you know. I am going to show you how to incorporate buttons and dividers into your newsletter. You can also incorporate video. I'm not going to show you video today. Once you understand how to pull these sort of feature items into your newsletter, it really is a simple matter of dragging and dropping it over and then uploading your content, making sure that you have to hit browse, go through the upload process to upload your content, and then pull it from your content library so that you can literally attach it into or embed into your newsletter.
Perfect. So
my question, we will look at some of these. Go ahead.
Okay. So then my question would be for video. It doesn't have to be attached to YouTube. Like if I just make a video, we can just straight drag and drop and it'll play, or at least I'll have like a screenshot of it to then be played.
I believe that is true, Millie. Yes, that it does not have to be, because you are incorporating the actual MP4 file itself, not a link to YouTube when you incorporate video here. There are some other places where we've talked about it having to be like a YouTube link, like building the landing pages, for example. But here, as long as you have, I believe it's an MP4 file. then you can upload it within that kvCore library, like we just did with the photos, and then insert it in your newsletter.
Perfect. And then my only other two questions is when it says social, is that just linking to like your Facebook and Instagram? And then dynamic content, is that something specific as well?
Dynamic content, that's a really good question. That's not a button that I've ever used with any of the newsletters that I've built. Social is going to be exactly that. I can find out more about dynamic content, but social is going to be linking to your social media sites. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I have my header. So what's going to come next in my newsletter? I'm going to do my introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my trash can to get rid of this section that's empty right now, because I want to lead right into my content and my sort of welcome, and telling people what they're going to get, what the content will be as they read this newsletter. So I'm going to first change my title of this section. So maybe I'll put Happy Holidays 2022. Okay. And again, I want to incorporate color and variety here. So what I can do is I can highlight this. I can go up to my font format bar, if you will, and I can go ahead and change it. Maybe I want to stay consistent with Georgia, because that's the font that I used in my title. And maybe I also now want to leverage that sort of cranberry color and use that consistently. And once I've created and chosen that color from the color palette, notice that it kvCore remembers it. So I don't have to keep guessing what that code was for that color. I can simply click on it from that, from the sort of the memory section, if you will. So now that I have my format, and I'm ready to go with my content, I need to get rid of this Latin and replace it with my actual English introduction. So I'm going to head back over to Word, and I'm going to copy my intro, which I've written out fully already. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to switch back over to kvCore, and I am going to highlight the Latin and replace it with my content that I already established. Okay. Now, because I'm in a text box, kvCore is going to keep this text formatting bar right there front and center for me to work from, which is sometimes good and sometimes bad, because sometimes you want to see like what your newsletter looks like and that toolbar is in the way, but it's also right there convenient so that you can quickly and easily edit the content and format it to stay consistent with what you're doing throughout the whole thing. So what I'm going to do here is I want to stay consistent in my font, which was Georgia. I also don't want it to be this small, right? So I want to make sure that I'm enlarging it so that it's something that's legible. Maybe 20 is a little bit too large. So let's say I slide back to 18. I can also adjust justification. So I'm the type of person that I really think that having right and left justification has a big impact on the look of a newsletter, or on any content for that matter. So I can go ahead and make that change as well. And then once I click off of the section, now you'll notice that that formatting bar, that font format bar goes away, and I can see a little bit better what my content looks like. The other thing is maybe I don't like the spacing that's happening in between each line. So what I can do is when I click on the actual message itself, I can take a look at the formatting and get rid of some of that spacing. So let's see, I just want to. Let's move color. Okay, so here for the spacing piece, if you'll notice, as I click, when I click off of the box, it's not there. When I click into the text box, take a look at what happens on the right-hand side. I have the ability to set some properties from the right-hand side or from that font text bar or toolbar. What I want to do is I want to compact my verbiage a little bit. So I'm going to work here in letter spacing, and I'm going to go ahead and reduce here in my settings some of these line spacing and line height defaults to change the look and presentation of my content. Does that make sense? You also have the ability to, you can either shrink or expand. So right now it's expanded to the full left to right margin of the newsletter, but you have the ability to reset what's called padding. So maybe you wanted more white space on the left and right sides of this particular section. You can set that here in your padding options, okay? But you don't have to get that complicated. For me, what I just wanted to do was take advantage of these two components, line height and letter spacing, to get this little less white space between the lines, but there could be a reason that I need that. And if I did, I can go the other way as well. Maybe, for example, maybe your newsletter is going to members of a 55 and over community, and maybe you know that a lot of members of that community would benefit and enjoy larger font with improved spacing. Okay, so again, you have the ability to make that change. The other thing that I want to do is, here's my first action button. In this case, I'm still at my intro, so I don't have an action button just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one here. Okay, it's going to ask me if I'm sure. And I'm going to, and see, here's a perfect example. So I can show you what happens when you make a mistake in the template. So I have to watch where my blue line is, where my blue outline, because that's the piece that's going to get deleted. So I wasn't paying attention and deleted the wrong thing. All is not lost. It's very simple. You just go back over to the right-hand side, and we're going to drop in a text box. And notice where it says drag it in here. So it's going to insert my text box right where I need it. I'm going to repaste my verbiage and go ahead and format it. So not the end of the world, okay, if I made a mistake. And that's part of the value of being ready to go and having everything done in a different program other than kvCore. So let's say we do 20 and get my justification. Okay. So now see where my outline is around this whole section. If I went ahead and hit the trash can button, it's going to delete my whole intro. The only thing I want to get rid of is this action button. So I want to make sure that's what I've highlighted. And now that's what's going to be removed. Okay. So now let's move into our first section. So if we go back and look at my outline, my first section is going to be a great outdoor family event. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and grab that title while I'm here. I'm going to head back over to kvCore. And so you'll see how this format is kind of set up for us. It's giving us a placeholder for the title. It's even giving us a placeholder for the author. So if you don't feel like you have a lot of creative content in you, but maybe you want to use your partners, maybe you have a home inspector that you work with, an appraiser, a mortgage lender. Think of it from a real estate standpoint. Think of all the professionals that you work with on a regular basis, maybe somebody in like the homeowner's insurance space, the title insurance space. You can say, with your 4 or 5 partners, I want to work together to create a monthly newsletter that we can all leverage and share with our clients. In that case, what you can do is use this format to identify and give credit to each of those partners, who they are, what company they're with, and maybe their title or their credentials. Okay. So that's part of the built-in placeholder. Then, of course, we have our Latin, because we're going to have a placeholder for our verbiage. And there's even a placeholder for an image. If you didn't need any of these sections, any of these components or placeholders for this first section of your newsletter, then you simply make sure, just like we just talked about, make sure that blue outline is over the right component and you can delete it. I'm going to be creating all of this content for me, so I don't have a need for sort of author or credit for each piece. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that component and see how it just removed it. Okay, so let's go ahead and customize this to what I want it to look like for my newsletter. I'm going to take this title, this placeholder title, and I'm going to go ahead and paste my actual outline content title. Then I've got to just do a little work to get my font consistent, right? And I want to make sure that I obviously make it larger. And let's continue with our color theme. And maybe I also want to make sure it's bolded. Okay, so it sort of stands out. The next thing I'm going to do is go back and get my description of the event. Okay, so I'm going to copy my verbiage, head back over to kvCore, and see how this just makes it so much simpler. Now I'm in my Latin verbiage placeholder, and I am once again going to paste my detail into this section. I want to do some formatting because I chose to change the font, and I'm going to maybe set my font size, set my justification. Okay. And then the last two things that I want to look at before I think about the overall look of this entire section, the last two things I want to do are drop in my photo and make my action button active. Okay, actually set it up to work, to do something. So I'm going to click for my image. I'm going to click browse. Remember, like I said, we already went through the exercise of pulling in all the photos that we're going to use in our newsletter today. So I don't have to do any more uploads, but you'll notice that depending on how large your library grows, either of photos or videos or both, it will take a few seconds for that library to pull up. Okay, so here with the Dickens Festival, I chose an image with Christmas carolers, Dickens carolers. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that photo, and you'll see it here. Now, what I notice about this photo is that it's really small compared to the verbiage for this section. You can do things to move and change that formatting to make it sort of more appealing or visually exciting to whoever is reading your content. What you can do is you can either click on the image. If you take a look, when I click on the image on the left, you'll see that the properties appear on the right. And I can turn off auto width, and then I can slide this toggle up or down to make my photo larger or smaller. Now it's going to limit how much I can do because right now, the way that I have this particular section set up, this triangle, or excuse me, this rectangle is much larger and the other rectangle is much smaller. So if you remember when we were in rows, it's like this, with a very small rectangle and a very large rectangle that together make up this whole section. So what I can do is if I didn't like it this way and I wanted to maybe change the proportion, I can go ahead and select one of these other options. So maybe I like this one, and I want to insert this one into my newsletter. I can do it this way, and I can format them. So let's say this is going to be an image, and this is going to be a text box. So what I'm doing is I'm almost duplicating this section right now to see which one I like more, if that makes sense. So let's see if I do. And let me take a look with my photo. Again, just have to be a little bit patient. Pull in my photo again. Now see how this format looks different than this format, where my photo is a little bit larger, a little bit easier to see and more appealing. Okay. So what I can do is I can watch your blue outline. I can go ahead and first here, I can delete the image, my smaller image that I wanted to get rid of. And then I can delete the verbiage. And now the only other things that I have to do, I want to just make sure that I'm going to move my action button. And we're going to go ahead and change. Let's do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my outline, my header, cover the entire left to right space. So we're going to do Georgia 20. We're going to center it. We're going to change our color. And then look at my blue outline. Let me get rid of this duplication. Okay. Do some formatting. So a lot of what you're doing with your formatting is you have the ability to drag and drop, delete sections, to add sections. And then when you add a section, you just have to tell kvCore what type of content to expect in that section. Okay. So let me go ahead and format some of this. Maybe I feel like this is just a little bit too big. Okay. And so let's just click off of it for a minute. So get rid of that edit button. So you can kind of see how I chose to get rid of placeholders and go with a formatting of my own that allowed me to give a slightly larger picture, which I think having a slightly larger image allows me to better convey to the reader the sort of look and feel of the Dickens Festival. I've got my content. Now, the only other thing that I need to do is address my action button. Okay. So just like when I clicked on the image, saw the image properties on the right-hand side. When I clicked on the verbiage, I saw the text properties. Now, when I click on the button, I'm going to see the button properties on the right-hand side. Okay. In most cases, what you will want to use this button for, this button functionality for, is to take somebody to a website. On occasion, you may want to be able to attach a PDF, which you can do. But first, what you have to do is upload your PDF into your kvCore library. So the same way that we uploaded our picture images, you can upload a PDF image, and then you can come over here when you click on your button. If you want that button to take somebody, let's say, for example, you have a yard sale checklist. Maybe this is your fall newsletter. Yard sales are big in the fall, and you want to be able to give somebody a checklist to plan their yard sale event. So what you can do is you can click on link type. And then, under here, under URL, you can click link file. And when you do that, it's going to pull you directly to that library of photos that you're using. And it's your PDF. You either will go ahead and upload it, or if you have already uploaded it, then you simply insert it. Okay. And it will go ahead, and what happens is it almost treats it like a web link, so that if somebody were going from your newsletter and wanted to click on it, it would almost, it's going to give them the PDF, but in a web link form. Okay. In this case, what I did when I planned out my outline, all of my buttons are going to take me to a website. So if I click on the button, I'm going to swing back over to my outline, which is all ready to go. And I'm going to simply take this link, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it right here in this URL field. Okay. So I don't have to worry about that whole big sort of clunky link being visible in the content of my newsletter. That's all going to be sort of behind the scenes in code form. What I can do over here on the right-hand side is now I can go ahead and change the features and the look of my button. Okay. And how it fits into my newsletter. So I've added my link, my URL link. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I want to change the verbiage. I don't want it to say learn more. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to highlight it. And then I'm just going to start typing what I want it to say in its place. So I'm going to say follow on Facebook. Okay. And now it'll save whatever I type. It'll automatically overwrite whatever placeholder was there. Now, let's say maybe I want to go ahead and change the color. I can do that on the right-hand side. Now, the only difference is unlike when we were talking about the font and it remembered my font color, it won't automatically remember and translate that color when you go from font to button. So what we want to do is kind of find a similar color or a complementary color that, again, brings brightness and interest to the overall look of the newsletter. So maybe I click on this link and I don't want the gray. Like I said, maybe we want to go with something more in the cranberry. And now once I click on that, notice what happens is that it'll give me options at the bottom that could work similarly with other features and components of the newsletter. And I can also see in real time what it looks like. Okay, so see how the color of the button changed. I can also, if I wanted to, I can change the font that's on my button. I can make it bold if I wanted to. So let's say I want to go ahead and make it bold. I can do that. Okay. I can change the color of the font. So if I didn't want it to be white, if I wanted it to maybe be black or gray, I can do that here with text color. In this case, I don't want to change it. I like the white on the cranberry. So I'm going to leave that the way that it is. But just know that this is something that, especially as you build out your first one, play around with all of these options. The other thing that I want to show you, as I incorporated this section into my newsletter, notice what happens when I click. So when I click here, it's going to give me the properties for my title. When I click here, look at where my blue outline is. It's going to give me the properties that relate to this text box. When my blue outline is here, I'm going to get the properties specifically for this image. Now watch what happens if I kind of go out to the margin and I put my blue outline on this entire section. So now it's got my image, it's got my button, and it's got my text all in one spot. If I scroll down on this row property section on the right-hand side, there's this really cool feature. So I showed you one way that I was playing around trying to find a better contrast in size between image and text. You can also utilize this custom column section to expand or change your features between these two columns. Okay. So maybe I wanted to expand and make my image larger. You only have 12, it's not pixels, but you only have sort of 12 units, if you will, to work from. So obviously, if I'm going to expand my image in this format, it's going to reduce my verbiage. And when it reduces the number of units for my verbiage, then that means that my verbiage is going to appear longer in my newsletter. I may want it that way, but I may not either. So maybe I decide that I don't like that, and I want to go back to the 4/8 split. Okay, so that's very easy. You just simply take your ruler, if you will, and slide it back to 4 and 8. Okay, does that make sense on what we did? Because there are a bunch of steps that are happening there from a formatting standpoint. I think for sure you can understand again why it's so important that you have your content ready so that you only have to focus on the look and feel of the newsletter when you get to this stage. But do you see how we've built out our first section? Any questions on that so far?
No, that makes sense. Very, very good.
Okay, good. The other thing that I'm going to mention, just as we've gotten through our first section, is you'll notice that there's a built-in placeholder for this little divider line. Okay, and if you remember, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. If we go back to content, remember there was a divider option. So you can pull in a divider at any place within your newsletter. There's already a placeholder here for us, but it's really faint. I want it to be maybe a little bit bolder and a little bit brighter, if you will. I can go ahead and make those changes here because remember, I clicked on it with my blue outline. So this is where when I click on it, these properties to the right relate to whatever I have outlined in blue on the left. So maybe I want to go with a much thicker line, and maybe I also want to go with black because I feel like it'll stand out. Okay. And then once I do that, you can see as I scroll up or down how that changes the look a little bit. Maybe the black feels too harsh. No problem. Just click on the black, click on the color, and maybe I'll find another color, let's say with this charcoal gray. So it does kind of give us some recommendations, right? So maybe the charcoal when I click off, is going to give me that perfect, it complements my header for Discover Burlington County, which I went with more of a gray, not a black, but it's bold and it clearly separates and defines each section of my newsletter. Okay, so now I'm ready to move on to the next section. And we're going to repeat what we just did, okay, with section 2. The first thing that I want to do is I want another divider that's going to look exactly like my one up above. I want to stay consistent in that format. I can do that in a couple of ways. There is a placeholder here with another divider, or to keep it really simple, I can simply click here and hit this instead of hitting the trash button. Look at where my outline is. It's around my divider. I can hit this is actually a duplicate, like a copy button. So I can hit the copy button and notice how it now gives me a second divider. I'm going to take my mouse and come over to this little, looks like a plus sign of arrows, if you will. That's what's going to let me move and relocate this section in my newsletter. So this is where I just want to scroll down a little bit. And this is where it gets, because the one thing that I wish I could do, that I can't do, is expand this workspace a little bit. I wish that I could expand this template screen to cover my entire laptop screen, but unfortunately you can't. But I can go ahead using that arrow, as I can move it down to another section of my, just trying to get everything in here, to another section of my newsletter. Now, because my verbiage is pretty long on the Dickens Festival, it's giving me a hard time about being able to see where I'm going to drop it. So sometimes you just have to drop it a little bit like that, and then move your mouse down, and then you can scroll it down a little bit more and drag it again. Okay. Now, when I drag it down here, because I drug it right under my text box, it's trying to only make it as wide as my verbiage section, because that's where I drug it. So in this case, I can, again, further drag it down, bring it here, and now it'll expand because of where I placed it in my newsletter across left to right, the full margin of my document. So once I do that, I want to make sure I get rid of the other one. So again, you see that real faint divider. You see my blue outline is around it. I'm going to go ahead and trash that very small, almost unnoticeable divider. Okay, so now I'm keeping from one section to the next consistent with my format. So let's swing back over to section 2. Now we're going to do a great adult night out. So I'm going to simply copy my title, go back over to kvCore. I'm going to replace the placeholder. And then I'm going to go ahead and do some formatting, keeping track of what I've done previously. So I've gone and used the Georgia. That was at 20. And I really like that cranberry color. But it doesn't, just because I was using the cranberry up here does not by any means suggest that I have to continue to use that everywhere else. Maybe every section I want to have a different color, or maybe I want to choose colors that complement whatever photo I've selected or image that's going to be used in that section. It's totally up to you. The point is that you have the ability to set that from section to section, so you can be as consistent or as colorful or flavorful as you want. Again, the way that we're setting up this newsletter, I'm not going to use like an author or credit section. So I'm just going to make sure that my blue outline is around the right spot and remove that section with the trash can. I'm going to hop back over to my outline. I'm going to grab my verbiage about the winery, go back over to kvCore and get rid of the Latin and paste in the verbiage. Okay, now if I couldn't remember what my formatting was, I can simply go up to my previous section. Okay, and once I click on that text box, it's going to remind me that I was Georgia with font size of 18. So then I can just go right back down here, highlight my verbiage, go with Georgia, go with 18. Now it's important when you choose your text size that you have the full text highlighted Otherwise, it will not change the text size. It's actually got to be highlighted, kind of like a Word format or a word processing format would work too. Remember, I really like that right-left justification, so I'm going to make that change as well. And maybe I want to go ahead and tighten my format a little bit. Rather than have more spacing between the lines, I'd like to go with less. And then my last two components, I need to deal with my image and deal with my button. So let me do my image. I'm going to click Browse. It's great that I already have gone through all the effort of identifying and uploading my photos. So I just have to go into my folder. Remember, this takes a few seconds, especially when you have, a number of items. And this is where I want to use my wine corks. Okay, so I'm going to insert that image. And I'm going to address the functionality of my button. Now, let me do the functionality of the button, and then we can talk a little bit about the overall format of this section. Okay, so once I click on the button, and that's where my blue outline is, then my properties will appear on the right-hand side. I need to go back to my outline. I'm going to grab my URL, head back over to kvCore, and drop it into the URL box. Okay. And then I'm also going to take a look at maybe changing the color. And maybe I want to, let's see, what did I put in my outline? In this case, for my second section, I like the verbiage learn more. So that is what the placeholder says for kvCore. So I'm going to go ahead and leave learn more. But what I'm going to do to enhance it is just bold it. Okay. And notice that there are other things that I can do here on the right-hand side with this button. If I wanted to center it, make it left justified, right justified, I can just simply click on those formatting options. Okay. And now the other thing is, let me take a look at this whole section. Maybe I, again, am not too excited about the proportion verbiage to photo. So let me play around with it a little bit. Notice where my blue outline is. It's now around the entire section. And I'm going to come over to this customized columns. Now the placeholders for this particular section were 9 and 3. So let's go ahead and slide. Let's see how we like the 8 to 4 going the other way, where my image is going to be on the right-hand side as opposed to the left-hand side. Okay. So I like that. I think that works. If I even took it a little bit further, let's say I do 7 and 5. Okay. That I think works too, because it doesn't elongate my verbiage by a whole lot, but it still gives you, I think, an even better sense of the image when you get to that, so that you can see pretty clearly or get the sense that they're wine corks. Okay. Any question about that so far? Okay, good. So let's do one more section, and just to, again, go through, the steps so that you feel comfortable of the sort of back and forth and the formatting that goes on. So in this case, if I go back to my outline, my third section is going to be, let's actually go down and take a look at our core holiday homes. Okay. So remember, with the idea and the format, the thought process of my newsletter is I want to take people on a journey of things that they can enjoy and experience for the holidays. And I want to conclude with something that is sort of rooted in real estate in a soft way, so that at the very end of my newsletter, when I give them information about me and my background, wishing them a happy holiday, it feels like it sort of came full circle, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and copy in my title, Core Holiday Homes. I'm going to swing over to kvCore, and in my placeholder, I'm going to swap it out and format it. So make sure it's highlighted. Georgia. And then highlight it again to make sure that I can change our font size and our color. And then maybe I want to bold it too. Okay. Now notice if I forgot, this one's bolded. And this one I did even bigger. So if we wanted to do something bigger, we can simply go back and adjust it and change it. It's something that you can go back and easily edit as you continue to work through and build out your content. Okay. Be very mindful of that blue outline. Can't say that enough. Remember, not using this credits box. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to copy in my verbiage. Now notice too, when I am creating my verbiage, one of the things in the vein of my theme of activities that people can do, I try to give them a little bit of information about what's free, what's not free, what comes with a cost. And whatever my link is, I'm trying to make sure that it's going to take them to a place where they can either get more information, maybe in some cases actually make reservations, or buy tickets. Okay. So again, the idea of the button is that there's some sort of action involved, that it's going to transport the reader of your newsletter to another place where they can continue to pursue and learn more about this option that you've introduced to them. Okay. So I changed my justification. You could always change your font color too, if you didn't want to go with the gray and you wanted everything to go with the black, whatever your preferences are. I'm going to go ahead again and reduce the line spacing. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my last two, my image and my button functionality. For my image, I uploaded, I should say, a photo of an older home decorated for the holiday. So I'm going to go ahead and insert that. Okay. Now let's just say, for example, that I didn't like how small this photo was, but I also didn't like when I tried to customize the columns and move between maybe the 3 to 9 going to 4 to 8 or 5 to 7. Maybe I wanted my image to run across the entire column, like the entire left right margin. I can do that too. The way that you can do that is, let's go ahead and remove this image. And then we want to go ahead and here, if you look at where my blue outline is, I don't even want space for this particular column that's in blue. I want my entire verbiage column. Oh, it won't even let me. So what we can do here, so notice that the best you can do is 2 and 10 when you're splitting your 12 units between left and right format. So let's say I really would prefer to have my text on top with my image underneath it. What I can go ahead and do is I can get rid of the text box. And then I can pull in, if I go over to the right-hand side, go to the content tab, and I'm going to pull in 2 images. I'm going to pull in a text box. Here, I'm going to show you, we're going to make some changes here in a second. And I'm also going to pull in an image box here. Okay. Just going to real quick go ahead and okay. So now I have an image box and a text box. And I'm going to go ahead. Let's even just get rid of this entire section here where we didn't like the format. And it really was kind of limiting us in how flexible we could be with our layout. So I'm going to get rid of this whole section. So first I'm going to build my verbiage, and then I'm going to add my image. And then the last thing that I can do is I can go ahead and pull in my button. Okay, so let's do all of that. So here, if I go back to my outline, tour holiday homes. Go back and pull my description of the event. Here. Now you could make this 2 different text boxes if you wanted to. All you would have to do is simply go from your content tab and pull over another text box. And you would have one text box for your title, one text box for your verbiage. Either way, there's no wrong answer. But in this case, what I just want to make sure is that I consistently format. If I'm going to use all one text box, within that text box, I can go ahead and change component by component the features. Okay, so let's just make this bold, stay consistent. And now let me, with my verbiage, going with Georgia, with 18, and with justified. Okay. So notice you're getting the same result. So whether I had a separate title text box and description text box, or I did it all as one piece by only pulling over one text insert, one text box insert, you can still get the same result. Now let me pull in my photo. So I'm going to hit browse. Find my photo again. Okay. Now look at how it changes, how it looks different in my newsletter from maybe some of the other photos where the space is being shared, partly by verbiage and partly by image in the left to right space. Okay. So again, just another thing, and I could go back and make all of my images this way, but what I like when I build a newsletter is I like the variety. I like to have an image appear on the left, an image appear on the right. I like to have a larger image. And especially in this case, when we're talking about an image that relates to real estate, and that's how I'm going to wrap up my newsletter, I think that we really want to sort of exude that warm, fuzzy, holiday warmth, home sweet home kind of feel. At least in me, with the way I do my website, the way I do my Discover Burlington County pages, that's going to be consistent for how I do a lot of other things in my marketing. Okay. The other thing is maybe I don't want it quite this big. So again, be mindful of where your blue outline is. So make sure your blue outline is around your image. You can simply turn off the auto width, and then you can work with your slide so that maybe it doesn't take up the full left to right margin. Maybe you just want it to be slightly smaller. You also, again, have the ability to go left, center, or right justification. That's up to you. And that's kind of where I would leave my formatting. Okay. Does that make sense? If I wanted to do it that way. So now let's say, and you'll notice, look how many different placeholders there are left in our newsletter that we haven't even utilized. Okay. What I like about that is that when you're building out your newsletter for the first time, depending on how you organize your sections, this is a great format, I think, verbiage and image when you're talking about one of your like larger bullet points, if you will, or larger topics or larger events that you're covering in your newsletter. But sometimes you get to the end of the newsletter, and I like how they show you this format too, where you might have two smaller, almost sort of like subsections. And then there's even another one at the bottom showing you 3 subsections. So how might I utilize that? Well, let's go back to my team newsletter. One of the things that I might use this section for is there are a lot of things that happen at the end of the year. You need to pay your board dues. You need to pay your MLS dues. You need to get your Circle of Excellence applications in. So you need to get your CE done. So this might be a great place where I don't want a full, large section for my team newsletter, but I want maybe a smaller section where I'm highlighting those things side by side to draw attention to them and to remind everybody, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Okay. If I didn't want that section, then I simply be mindful of where my blue outline is, and I can remove it with the trash can. Okay. And it took out that full section. Same thing here with this, with the double. I can simply be mindful of my blue outline and delete it. Okay. Any questions on that piece?
No, perfect.
Great. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish up with one last section. So I could go back, obviously, because I built out 5 sections. I could go back and add those sections. I'm not going to do that here, but if I were going to actually send this newsletter out, I certainly would do that. But the last thing that I want to do is just incorporate something about me. Okay. So to do that, well, let's just get rid of the rest of the sections that we're not going to use. There's this one other section here. And then I'm just going to utilize this one final section to go ahead and conclude. Okay, now in this case, I didn't have it pre-written. So I'm just going to, let's get rid of this first. Yeah, okay. Okay, they're just something you can put whatever you want there. What I would probably actually suggest, what I think would be really good is however you describe yourself in your ongoing marketing materials, be consistent here so that if there are certain things that you reference, if you have sort of a tagline or um, a slogan or a logo or a catchphrase, be consistent and be sure to include all that here. So it kind of connects the dots, if you will, through all your different types of marketing campaigns and efforts. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same formatting. I want to stay consistent, right, from section to section. And now I'm going to go ahead and browse. I have a number of photos here. Okay, so I have my headshot. So again, this is one of the photos that you would want to upload and then utilize. And I encourage, and I think a lot of top producers will recommend that you don't necessarily want to use a new image every time you put a new marketing piece out there. That your image consistency really helps the reader, the recipient, the person on the other end of your marketing piece recognize you in a way that they are connecting the dots. If you're always using a different image of you, it makes that ability to connect from one piece to the next more difficult. Okay, that's just a piece of advice that I would give. In terms of the button, if I wanted to do a learn more button, maybe actually, and think about now your website, right? Think about what's happening and what the functional components of your website are. So in my case, I might want to do connect with me. Okay. And maybe what I'm going to do is take my URL and drop it, here I am on the button, right? So I'm going to drop it in the URL box. Maybe if I'm doing more of a home valuation or real estate based newsletter, maybe my URL is not going to take me to my home page, but maybe it's going to take me to the sell page, directly to the sell page where somebody could enter their home address to get their home value. Okay. So again, just think about what your newsletter is looking to achieve and then work around that. Just want to make sure I stay consistent with my formatting. It gets a little temperamental. Okay, change our color. Great. we go. Just had to get my cursor to highlight all of the verbiage. And remember, if I'm on the button, I can easily change the color of my button. Make sure that it's bold so it stands out. And I might want to change the justification and center it. And then maybe the last thing that I might want to do is go to my content, and maybe I want to drop in one final image. Okay. So I can take an image button and I'm going to drag it in. So notice if I drag it in here, it's going to drop it where it says drag here, but notice how the blue outline is not running full left to right. That's because where I'm dropping in that image, I'm dropping it under a section that is not full left to right. So I want to make sure that I'm consistent in where I drop it, that I see the blue outline sort of tells me, yes, this is where I want it and this is how I want it formatted. So I'm going to go ahead and put the full left to right, browse. And I have an image that I use. Thank you. Again, if I didn't want it to be that large, I can simply toggle off the auto width, make it a little bit smaller. Maybe the other thing, there's no reason for me to have these dividers at the end. So again, being mindful of my blue outline, make sure it's around the component that I really want to get rid of, and then go ahead and use the trash can to remove it. Then the last thing that you can do at the end is you can just give your contact information. I like to use this gray space, this placeholder space. Again, you don't need it. It doesn't have to be there. You can trash can it if you want. But this is a good place to just include your email address, your website URL, your cell phone number, your office number, and you can change the fonts again of all of that information as well. You can change the justification. So if you wanted to all read to the left or to the right or to center, you have all of that same functionality open to you. Remember that you can change these dividers that are between each section, just like we changed the ones above, or we can go ahead and use that duplicate function as well, where we can copy our existing divider and simply scroll down and drop it in where we want it to. So if I just wanted to go ahead and increase there we go. I can do that. And then I can do the same thing here. Make sure that my outline's where I want it. Whoops, I'm changing the border space, which I didn't want to do. There we go. Change the color. Okay, so there you have an idea of what it would look like if I compile the full newsletter. Now, when you're done, or even what I encourage is periodically, maybe after every time that you complete a section, go ahead and hit the update template button. That is essentially your save button. The only downside to that is that every time you hit update template, it's going to save it, but then it's going to take you out of the document so that you have to go back into it. Okay. So that's kind of like the one drawback. Now, once you get to the point where you say, okay, I'm ready to go, I want to go ahead and send this newsletter. To do that, you're going to go back into your marketing dashboard and you're going to go to schedule mass emails. Okay. And then hit get started. Now, we've talked about this a little bit on how you can leverage this. If you want to send out just sort of a one-time event, a one-time email, the newsletter is a perfect, this particular like mass email function is a perfect vehicle for getting your newsletter out to a select group of people. So the way that I will do that now is I'm going to go ahead and schedule the email. And now all these parameters relate to the actual email going out. Okay. So you have the option to either filter your contacts by some criteria or select hashtags, which I think is the most common way. Or you can also determine by status. So if you wanted to send an email to all your buyers, to all your sellers, to all your prospects or sphere, then you can just identify, you can click on that. And then you can identify here one or more of these status types. that you want to send your message to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and hit contacts with hashtag, and I'm going to do test. So I'm going to find anybody with hashtag test in my database, because that's how I like to first test the process. And I always encourage that with everybody. Test it and know how it works before you go ahead and try to send it out to 50, 100, 250 people. Okay. You have the ability in this schedule a mass email function to determine the date and time that you send it. It'll default to today. You don't have to stay to today. So if you felt it was really important that this go out, maybe you were doing a New Year's Eve newsletter or a Happy New Year email, you can prep it in advance and have it ready to go and just schedule it to go out at a certain time. It's not that you have to be sitting at your computer at 6 o'clock on New Year's Eve to be able to get your newsletter out or your Happy New Year email out at the right moment. That's, I think, really great about this function too. So let's say we leave it at the 21st, and you have the ability to then select your time. And unless you're selecting something that's maybe in the next 60 minutes, kvCore is pretty on point with this. So if I were to select 5 p.m., that email message is going to go out pretty doggone close to 5 p.m. Okay. It's just typically when I pick something that's within the first 60 minutes of time that's available, that there may be a slight delay. It may not be perfectly precisely 12 p.m. Okay. Now, what you have the ability to do, just move everybody's face, is you can pull in your template. So in this case, once I've chosen the people that are going to receive it and when it's going to be sent, I want to go ahead and pull in my template, and it's going to remember something that I did recently. Okay. If it didn't remember what you did recently, then just start typing to search. And remember what I recommended, having your name in the title is going to be helpful to you. So in this case, it remembers my Deanna Discover Burlington County. And as soon as I click on it, look what happens. It pulls in my entire newsletter that we just built right here into my mass email. Okay. So I don't have to do anything else. I just had to pull it in. I don't have to do any of the formatting because I already did all of that. Okay. Now from here, you have two options. You can either send a test or you can schedule it. What I like, when you're doing your first newsletter, for sure, go ahead and send a test. Okay. And what it will do is it's not going to send a test to whoever you've selected to receive it. It's going to send the test to you, to your email. So let's go ahead and do that and send the test. So you'll notice when I click on that, it's going to go ahead and give me that confirmation that the email has been queued. So now I'm going to go over to my email. And I'm going to give it a couple of seconds, and I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to show you. See if there's a way that I can. Okay, so if I click on this, now this is what my newsletter looks like. Now I just expanded it. There we go. Okay, so this is my test. This is me seeing the look and feel of my newsletter from an inbox perspective, okay, before it goes out to my people. Okay. So once you're content with the test, if you're not content with the test, then you can simply say, you know what, I want to cancel this mass email. I want to go ahead and cancel out of it and go back, make edits to your newsletter in the marketing section. I would not recommend that you make your edits here. I recommend that you exit out of the mass email scheduler, make your changes back in your marketing template itself. And then once you've updated the template and saved your changes, come back here, do another test. When you get to the point where you're content, then you can go ahead and schedule it. And then kvCore will take over from there. Okay. Lynette, did you have a question?
Yes. From your, I don't know if you are able to do any analytics with this. Is there a certain time of day or a day of the week that you find most people open up the newsletters?
That's a really good question. And I'm not going to pretend that I have that type of like marketing knowledge to be that precise. But what I will tell you is I think you have to think a lot about who's receiving your email. If, for example, when I send a team newsletter, I do find that I get much better engagement when I send the newsletter in the evening, in the middle of the week. I avoid the weekend. I avoid Friday night because, you're either at the end of a long week, just wanting a few hours of reprieve, or you're at a happy hour somewhere. So understanding your audience. So if you're sending a professional newsletter where you want to reach out to other real estate professionals or vendors, if you will, then I think you're better off sending your content out during the day, during working hours when somebody is actively monitoring and addressing their emails. If you are sending this out to clients, friends, family, sphere, then I think you're going to be better to send it in the evening, in the middle of the week, or Saturday morning. I do know, generally speaking, that from a personal email and phone call standpoint, that a lot of marketing platforms suggest that the Saturday morning time slot produces better results. I'm not going to say that that's 100% true. I'm just telling you what I've heard and might recommend. But I think it does have a lot to do with whoever's receiving your content as to what makes sense on when it gets delivered.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments or thoughts about the newsletter or how you might use it? Or is there something that you would want to be able to do that you would want to see how that actually would be executed on in building a newsletter?
Oh, one more question. Sorry.
Yes, you're good.
Can you post it might be a silly question. Can you post your newsletter on your like Facebook page?
So in that case, you can't post the actual newsletter. But what you can do is just trying to think through how we might get around that, because you're going to have the newsletter in your email, like if you test it. And notice that it comes from kvCore. The other thing that I did want to mention as I answer your question, Lynette, the one thing that I wanted to mention was when you create and schedule a mass email, try to be very unique with your email subject. So in the schedule mass email function, you can set whatever your email subject line is going to be. And you want to make sure that you select a description that is not going to send your newsletter directly to somebody's spam. And what I will do is, I know that there's a website, and I don't have it top of mind right now, but there's a website that you can actually go and score your subject line. So I will provide that to everybody as a follow-up. And so if I just typed in monthly newsletter, I can tell you that it'll score that subject line as probably a C or a D. But what I started doing is for my team, I do your jam-packed monthly newsletter. Well, those unique words like jam-packed really significantly changed the scoring of my subject line and bumped it from a grade C to a grade A. So I'll get you that tool so that you can go back and grade your subject line. Don't take that for granted. That really is an important component of sending a scheduled mass email. So once that email goes out, what you can do is you can either take your email image, you can download it as a PDF, you can convert it to an image that you can then share on your social media. But I want to think if there's a way that we can somehow link it. So let me follow up on that. I have to maybe give some brain power to that, Lynette, on creative ways. I know with the blog, that's like, to me, that's a pretty quick way that you can go ahead and attach it. But maybe what I can do is just show a couple of examples. I would love for there to be a way that we can incorporate it into social media, because the one thing about the blog is that you have to send people to the blog to get people to the newsletter. And if people are right there on your Facebook or your Instagram, it would be great to get the engagement right then and there. So let me play around with that a little bit. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Don't you think the newsletter will be like way too long to be on the social media? I feel like people are like always scrolling up, and if you don't have like a headline and few things that can catch their attention, they would like skip it, you know?
It definitely, but one of the things that I think if there were a way to only see the first few lines, and then you can sort of click on it to see the full document, I think there could be benefit or value in there.
Okay.
Just like when you're on a website and maybe the website has 6 or 8 things that they want to draw your attention to, but they know they can't just you can't have paragraphs to describe each of those 6 to 8 things. People are just going to lose interest by the time they scroll through 1 or 2. So you only show the first couple of lines, and then they always have see more, read more, continue reading, that sort of thing to expand the section. So if it would be cool if there was something that we can do that way. The other thing that you could do to sort of drum up interest is you can, when you receive that email, you can take a snippet. If anybody has ever seen us or used the snippet tool, and let me see if I can show you that. So Snippet is a Windows tool. I don't know if there's a comparable Mac tool. I'm sorry, but in Windows, there's this snippet tool that allows you to take almost like a picture, like of an
Yeah.
image, and then you can insert it somewhere else. So when the snipping tool comes up, you just hit new, and then you'll see how my screen like grays out a little bit, and I have this plus sign. So now what I could do is I can take this little bit of a snippet, and I can head over to my Facebook page. So again, this is a way that I could get people interested. Uh, and then maybe I can, let's see if it'll let me paste the snippet here. Okay, and so it did, it let me paste the snippet. So again, I'm just trying to take a little bit of the content from the top of my newsletter, and maybe it's not the top. Maybe there's like a really cool piece or a reference to an event that's coming up that I really want to share and highlight. Then you can use that snippet tool and post that. So then the idea here, remember, you're looking for engagement. So by putting a post like this on your social media, you can do this with Instagram, you can do this with Twitter, you can do this with LinkedIn. You're trying to call the viewer to action. So if they've received your newsletter, you want them to click into the newsletter to read it, and maybe even take it a step further and visit some of these links that you've embedded. But here the call to action is, let me get more people on my distribution list and get more people into my CRM. So that's another way that you can do it. And you can do this with the blog too, Millie, even going back to that, you could take this snippet and incorporate the snippet into your blog as well.
This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You just off the cuff, just bada bing, bada boom.
Sarah's testing me today. Y'all, I should have gotten an even bigger one. Okay, so are there any other questions or thoughts? Are you thinking about ways that you might leverage a newsletter in your business? And do you think that the idea of maybe doing something that isn't quite entirely real estate based might make sense for your people, for your loved ones, right?
So like to kind of summarize, I think you said you'll do another session on newsletter. This was just kind of the beginning, so to speak.
This is the full session on newsletters.
Okay.
But if you are ever in a situation, anybody, if you're in a situation where you want to go through a build, like the first time through together, I'm happy to do that, or even hold another session where we could even maybe use you as a guinea pig to build out another newsletter. But I think what's most but I think what's most important to start is that whenever you're launching something like this, remember what I said in the beginning. Think about who you want to reach. Think about how committed you're going to be to this. So if it's only something that you're willing to do once a quarter, then just make it a quarterly newsletter. If it's something that you're prepared to do once a month, do it once a month. I will tell you what I started doing, what I learned with the team newsletter is that I would keep a small notebook in my purse. And every time something came up, so if I was on a Zoom, if I was in a meeting, if I was at a training, if I was talking to somebody, whatever the case may be, I always had that notebook handy so that I was making notes, so that when it came time, like 3 weeks into the month to prepare my newsletter to drop at the end of the month, I had my notebook and I knew all the components, all the pieces of content that I was going to pull from. I wasn't just sitting there staring at my laptop saying, oh, what am I going to talk about this month? Okay. So I find that to be really helpful. So if you're kind of in the back of your mind, always thinking about, oh, that would be great for the newsletter, or, oh, that would be, my sphere would love this information, or this would be a great theme for, March or June or July or whatever the case may be. Have a notebook handy. So those are the things that I would say, think about first and foremost. Then we can get into, set your outline, build your first newsletter content. And then when you're ready, we can come back here and say, all right, Lynette's ready to go. We're gonna schedule and go through Lynette's first newsletter build together. So whoever
With a
wants to
red
be
pen.
that person.
Okay.
Well, if you want to be that person, Lynette, feel free. Or anybody for that matter, if that's something that you're interested in doing, we can absolutely. But as it stands right now, from a schedule standpoint, this is our one newsletter training that we're going to have in this cycle. Okay. And then the last of our components next week is going to be about using kvCore on the go. So, and that's going to wrap it up. And then in January and February, we're going to kick off a whole new block of content, which I think is going to be exciting and different, and takes its inspiration from you, Sarah. Actually, the first few weeks of January, we're going to really concentrate on expanding wealth opportunity. Okay, so going beyond traditional real estate and just selling real estate and earning commission. What are some of the ways that you can, both within our brokerage, opportunities that the brokerage extends us, then what are some other opportunities outside of the brokerage where we can earn additional wealth? That's going to lead us right into the month of February, where we are really going to concentrate on the investor space from two perspectives: from you as an agent trying to find and maintain investor clients, delivering the greatest value to investors. But then also another perspective is you being an investor yourself. So in those classes, it's not going to be me. I'll be moderating, but I'm bringing in professionals, other agents in our network and other vendors who have expertise in those areas that can really help guide the conversation and answer your questions in an intelligent and sensible way to help you really explore investor opportunity. So that's coming in January, February.
This is exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be something good. Yeah.
Am I allowed to invite people from outside of EXP?
You certainly can. Invite other people from, outside of EXP, or even, within EXP. I encourage you, if you think that any topic might be meaningful to someone and for whatever reason they're not getting the message or don't know that our training exists, absolutely. We're here to help people. And especially in that case, a lot of what we do with kvCore is so rooted in EXP. But when you get into those topics, that value can extend to so many people in so many directions, for sure, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, great. So excellent. That would be great, Millie, if you could. I know Juan. It's Juan Sarlo. That would be great. I would love, Millie. I have a few presenters lined up, but I'm definitely looking to round out a whole month's worth of topics in this space. So if you know of someone, especially if you've heard them speak before, I want to make sure that we're delivering really credible content to everybody who's taking the time to participate. So excellent. And then I'm just going to mention very quickly, because I don't want to panic anybody, but EXP has now formulated a new relationship with a company called Chime. Many of you may have heard of Chime. Chime is another CRM platform, not kvCore. kvCore is not going away. EXP still has the relationship with kvCore. kvCore is still coming to you with your $85 a month tech and education fee, which is phenomenal, incredible value. But what they've now done is they recognize that there are a lot of people in the CRM space who don't have a comfort level with kvCore and find a product like Chime. Chime is a good example of a product where the feedback that you often get is it's much more user-friendly. I do not know if it's as robust or as sort of deep in levels as kvCore, but because of this new relationship that EXP has, you as an agent can go out and purchase a Chime account at a significant discount. So the goal moving ahead for March, if we really want to get ambitious, is I'm going to dive in a little bit on the value and benefit of Chime, so that for those people who really just have dug their heels in with kvCore, Chime could be a good alternative for you, but it will come with a cost. It's going to end up being, I think, several $100s a year for an individual account, as opposed to kvCore that you're already getting and paying for with your $85. So, but remember, the purpose of our training is to make sure that you know that you have options and opportunities, and to help give you the details and tools that you need to decide if they can work for you in your business, make you some money, and help you be successful. So that's what we have coming up ahead.
Yeah,
Lots more
I wonder.
coffee.
I wonder how much do I need to save to get into the investing stuff.
And it's going to be great. And we will have, when it comes to the week of actually finding investor clients, the agents that I have are agents who work with investor clients, who have, proven strategies for how to find those clients. And it's going to be a combination of skill sets, people who do it very regularly and people who have maybe only a couple of investors, but who do significant volume year to year, and how they've been able to maintain that relationship. Then when it comes to you being an actual real estate investor, you will be hearing from agents in that space who are successful, who have strategies that work for them, so that you can understand and you can ask that question: how much do I need to start with? Where do you leverage that initial nest egg? And the idea here is that it's going to get your brain flowing. So if that's something that interests you, you'll feel like you have new resources to tap into and utilize to help you get some confidence and stick your toe in the water.
Yes, to be honest with you, I lost trust in all this digital money.
Yes.
Real estate is the best.
You're not the only one. And I hear that. I've heard that actually a number of times in probably the last 30, 45 days. So real estate is real estate. It's tried and true, and it's a known animal as opposed to an unknown. So I definitely am. There are a lot more experts in this space than there are in digital currency. So I look forward to bringing those all to you in the first quarter. So that's what we have ahead.
You are the best. Thank you. I'm gonna invite Jean. I'm gonna invite Jean to these classes.
Excellent. That's funny. All right, great. So what I really hope that you'll do is that you will take a shot at a newsletter. I would love if you would send it to me. If you're going to do a test and you receive it and you want some feedback on it, feel free to forward it to me. Or you can schedule your email and send it out to me that way. And I would be happy to go over it with you. Or if you just need to brainstorm, we can do that too. Let's think about how you're building your business and what type of themes might make sense for you in the space that you're in. So anytime you want to reach out. Otherwise, we're coming right up on 12 o'clock and the hours are ticking. Very few shopping hours left for those of us that are still trying to get gifts under the tree on Christmas Eve. But I hope you all have a wonderful holiday, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, going into the new year. Remember, we have one more session. So I hope to see you one more time before we head into 2023. Thank you all so much. And again, just have a wonderful and blessed holiday.
Thank you
You
so
too.
much. Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.